It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody, where each week we seek inspiration from great men and women to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. And you are here with your hosts. I am Andrew Bernstein. You are Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
I am fabulous, Andy, ready to celebrate the achievements of a man who made millions, lost millions, and ran three of the greatest steel companies in world history.
And we're talking, of course, about Charles Schwab, who was a brilliant first lieutenant of Andrew Carnegie, right, at Carnegie Steel.
Yep.
I think he was like 35 years old, became president at Carnegie Steel. Mm-hmm. Eventually went on to head Bethlehem Steel and build it into I think if I remember, Schwab was instrumental also, at least part of the sale of Carnegie Steel to a consortium led by J.P. Morgan.
U.S. Steel. Those are the three companies: Carnegie Steel, U.S. Steel, and then Bethlehem Steel. Different roles he played in each one of the organizations. And Andy, some of the things we'll talk about in Schwab's life, who lived a life like nobody else.
Lived like a king.
He lived like a king, yeah. So, but he brought this entrepreneurial spirit with him that enabled him to succeed. What about wealth? The question of wealth. Do wealthy people have an obligation to give away their wealth? He served under Carnegie, and he was very different from Carnegie in many ways. So we'll talk about that. And then I consider him the greatest motivator of men to be productive at their jobs. And what is that? What methods did he use in order to do that, in order to get the most out of his men, and perhaps maybe something about living within one's means. So some of the things that we could talk about with Charles M. Schwab. This is not the financial, just to clarify, it's not the financial investment company of today. It is this guy who we can call the Steel Titan. An excellent book on his life by Robert Hessen. And,
Right. And Charles Schwab, the steel magnate, certainly gave his money away, not in charity, but he gave it away, in bars and gambling halls and, dance hall girls. And so he knew how to spend his money. He lived high. He definitely lived high, but there's a price to be paid for that.
There's a price to be paid for that, Andy. Can I just make one point that Hessen makes right in his intro? He says that Schwab spent a fortune in order to enjoy his life to the fullest, but he also gave away substantial sums to help others. And when he did this, it wasn't out of a sense of duty or unchosen obligation. He never considered himself like a golden goose or a gorged bee, but a producer who earned the right to spend his money his own way. And so he always made this distinction between Carnegie, what Carnegie did with his wealth, and he's like, I spent mine. Okay, that's my prerogative. I went out and earned it honestly, and therefore I'm going to spend it. What he spends it on is his own, we'll talk about that.
It's his money. Right?
It's his money, and he doesn't apologize for his wealth. That's why I love this man more than Carnegie, Rockefeller. Can't say Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt never apologized, but when people apologize for their wealth, Bill Gates, totally apologized for his wealth in today's culture. But Schwab never did, and that's why I consider one of the many reasons I consider him a hero.
Yeah, he's enormously productive. Steel Titan is exactly right. I just wanted to make one point on this. His dates were 1862 to 1939. Right. And when he died, so he was 77 when he died in 1939, deeply in debt. But if he had lived just a few years longer, the money that Bethlehem Steel made in government contracts to make munitions for the war effort against fascism, Schwab would have been a wealthy man again.
Yes, to help win the war.
Yeah,
okay, to help win the war
against fascism. Absolutely right, which is another heroic deed. And then he could have went on to spend that fortune as well. But he died 2 years before
Yes.
American involvement in World War II. Anyhow,
Yeah.
so you want to start at the beginning,
But
Robert?
yeah, Andy, so his entrepreneurial spirit, well, first of all, he's from the age post-Civil War. He's born, he's too young to really remember the Civil War, but that period that you call the inventive period, that's where he is. Okay, 1860s. He's in the Pittsburgh area, Western Pennsylvania, a town called Loretto. And from an early age, there are two things that I like about him. First of all, he went to church. His family was religious and they sent him to church, and he just never bought into the poverty and the humility, chastity, those, virtues that they considered. Schwab rejected them.
He
was like,
certainly
"No."
didn't buy into chastity, that's for sure.
No. And so he starts working at a young age, starts making money. School doesn't really count for him. He sets up a chemistry lab in his home. Okay, he's fascinated with what's happening in heavy industry, in technology, and then gets a job working like as a page boy, going from one place to another, delivering messages. One thing he did get from church, he loved to play the organ, the church organ, and then the piano. It transformed that over to the piano. And one day, Andrew Carnegie comes in to find the messages that's coming from the factory a couple of towns over, and he hears this upbeat piano music playing, and he's like, "What's this?" And that's his first introduction to Charles Schwab, and the two just hit it off. Carnegie asked him, "Do you know any old Scottish songs?" and Schwab just belted out. He had this, what Carnegie called, $1 million smile and personality. So he walks into the room and he just lights it up, and this was
Carnegie
part of his entrepreneurial spirit.
Right, and Carnegie was one of the world's great raconteurs. I mean, he was a convivial companion, great conversationalist. So you could see why he and Schwab would hit it off, very effectively. But also, we did a hero show episode on Carnegie. He was one of the great so-called robber barons, but in reality, one of the great productive geniuses of the late 19th, turn of the 20th century.
That's the title of the episode. You actually call Andrew Carnegie the Steel Titan. So
okay.
We'll yield to him in this.
Sure. Carnegie built up that business that Schwab went working. But one of many great things about Carnegie is he had a real eye for talent and a penchant for promotion from within. He was looking to nurture talent within his company, cultivate it. And he saw it right away in a very young Schwab. And, not that many years later, it was unheard of for a 35-year-old to be head of a company as massive and productive as Carnegie Steel at 35 years old. That's very young. But Carnegie knew talent and work ethic and productivity when he saw it. And he said, "Yeah, you're ready. You are ready."
How much did Carnegie pay him? $1 million a year. This is before income tax.
A lot of money back then.
We know Nolan Ryan made $1 million, the first baseball player, right? Making $1 million a year in baseball.
Yeah, that's many years later. That's
many years. It was Schwab who opened that door. So what?
$1 million. So what year is that? That's 1890s, maybe 1900.
1897.
You know what the value of the dollar was in 1897? I mean, I'd be very happy to make $1 million today, but I'm only guessing the purchasing power of $1 million 125 years ago must be something like hundreds of millions of dollars today.
Yes, in fact, I could tell you, in 1906, when he was at the height of his powers financially, and he built this mansion on Riverside Drive. Okay, biggest building ever built in Manhattan. Okay, it was called Riverside back then. It's replaced by this ugly apartment complex called the Schwab House. That cost $7 million, Andy, and today it would be like 200 million. Okay, so but that 200 million is baked in with all taxes and all these other things. So the actual value, is astronomical comparatively. So some of the reasons that Carnegie, why did he pay him this much? Well, labor disputes. Okay, everyone knows if you don't know, actually the Homestead Act, the late 19th century is when labor unions were coming into power, and there was this inherent clash that the workers and management were at war. And Schwab rejected that. He flat out rejected it. He found ways to give incentives. His point was people respond to incentives. Okay. And he offered bonuses out of his own pocket, $20 bonus if you get this job done by this time. He just made people, he got the most out of people. There's one famous story, Andy, where he goes into one mill, one steel mill that's the least productive mill there, and he asked the supervisor, what's going on? And the supervisor says, I don't know what to do. I'm coaxing them, I'm threatening the workers, they're not doing the job. And he asks, how many heats of steel did they pour today? And the guy says 6 or 7. So say 7. And Schwab goes on the dusty floor and he writes the number 7. And then he leaves. And when the shift supervisor comes in, the night shift, he's like, what's that? Number 7. And the guy goes, oh, the big boss was in and he asked how many heats we poured. Night shift works. They change that 7 to an 8 because they respond to the competition. Now the big boss has laid down. He's kind of given a challenge. Within a couple of months, that was the most productive steel mill in the whole area, and it's just he knew how to get the most out of people, Andy, and that's why Carnegie paid him as much as he did.
Right, and unfortunately today. I mean, a lot of American industry is not unionized, say, but in the government-backed labor unions, in the industries, you can't do that. The unions oppose,
yes,
productivity via competition. But
yes,
it's certainly effective, especially when, like Schwab, you're offering more money for the who could turn out the most heats of steel. So it's a very effective motivator. And Schwab that's a great story. I remember Robert Hessen tells that in the book, right?
Yes.
As I recall.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great true story about, and Schwab was known as a master motivator of his workers. So yeah. He was, he knew human nature. He knew how to, so did Carnegie. I mean, you see why Carnegie Steel became the productive giant it did. These guys understood human nature and how to delegate authority. That's often the most difficult. I know several entrepreneurs, some are very successful. So one of them is a major backer of OSI, as a matter of fact. But they have long told me that the single most important thing in running a good business is personnel, finding the right people, knowing when they're ready, being able to delegate authority to the right individuals who are ready to step up and be productive. It's a very difficult thing. Carnegie and Schwab were both masters at it, and the results are obvious. I mean, they produced at Carnegie Steel, and later on at US Steel and at Bethlehem Steel, they produced massive amounts of steel. Enormous supply of steel relative to the demand for steel, so that the price of steel came way down. And think about it, because the demand for steel in the early 20th century was high. Skyscrapers are being built, at that time, which requires steel. Henry Ford starting automobile company, which requires steel. Railroads, Hill and Harriman are building, rebuilding transcontinental railroad lines, which requires steel. One of the things that often gets overlooked, Rob, the tremendous benefits of this steel manufacturing is agricultural technology. American farmers produce enormous amounts of food. You go into a U.S. supermarket, it's like this cornucopia. It's an amazing place. You have all these different foodstuffs. They're not out working the North 40 with a hand plow and a mule. They're using the latest technology that rolls off the assembly line, the John Deere plant, or International Harvester, or what have you. And that steel, as a lot of steel goes into tractors, combines, harvesters, and so on. And in order for farmers to be able to afford it, the steel needs to be inexpensive. Well, this is one of the great things that Carnegie and Frick and Schwab and these guys did at the turn of the 20th century. So yeah, these are enormously productive individuals who've just tremendously benefited the life of everybody in this country and many millions of people overseas. So
absolutely, Andy. And one thing that Schwab understood was that in general, people respond better to praise than to criticism. So he would walk around with expensive cigars in his pocket. He didn't smoke. That was one of the vices he never adopted, was smoking. Okay.
But he figured he'd encourage it in everybody else.
Well, he sees two workers smoking right underneath a no smoking sign. Okay. And this is a steel mill where fires breaking out. There's that possibility. You want fire to only be where it should be and not in new places. So right. One would think you see them smoking, you're going to chastise them. No, he takes out the two expensive cigars and says, here, boys, why don't you have these off the premises? Yeah. Okay.
That's good. That's a good motivator.
Do you think they're going to do it again? You know, I mean, that is a motivating lesson. And he just found like lavishing praise on people, giving financial rewards, and lavishing praise for a job well done. You know, it just filled them with a sense of pride, so that, yeah, the night shift will beat the day shift, and then right. The day shift will beat the night shift, considering, you know, which is why they became, you know, Carnegie Steel became as big as possible.
Right.
So,
and that's an important insight. There are people who think that, you know, fear is what people respond to. I know when in my intro to philosophy class, in the political philosophy section, one of the philosophers we read is Thomas Hobbes. And that's Hobbes, that's a Hobbesian belief, you know, that fear is the motivator. And every political dictator, you know, believes that, which is why dictatorships don't produce wealth,
that's right.
Intellectual or material wealth, the way free countries do. Schwab understood that. That's an important point. And he knew how to motivate me. I mean, I know, just think about it. Everybody out, you know, in Hero Land, we could think about it personally. I'm working for somebody, let's say, what would I respond to better? You better increase your productivity. You're going to be fired next month. Or come on, you could do better. I know you can. I know you have the talent. You have the experience. You could do better. If you could get to this level by next month, you'll get a raise. Yeah. What are most people going to respond better to? You know, you know, scenario A or scenario B. I think the overwhelming majority of us would respond much better to scenario B.
Totally, Andy. I mean, Schwab himself, he says, I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among men the greatest asset I possess. The way to develop the best that is in a man is by appreciation and encouragement. So we get to the late 1800s, Andy, and Andrew Carnegie is getting older. And he's considering taking his money, and pretty much giving it all away. And I think it's 1900. Schwab gives a talk in Manhattan at one of these big clubs to 80 millionaires were in the audience. And he gives this incredible, on top of everything else, he was a fabulous public speaker, usually impromptu, like off the top of his head, but he got people engaged and they're laughing and they're, you know, he's telling them the future of the steel business. And one guy who was there was JP Morgan, who didn't know Schwab. His first time that he saw Schwab, and pulls him over to the side and basically says, do you think the old man's ready to sell? And Schwab is like, I'll find out. And, you know, in one of the most incredible transactions, you know the story, right, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you, what happened between Carnegie and Morgan? We might have even mentioned this in a prior Hero Show episode.
Well, actually, tell you the truth, I don't remember the specifics. What did happen between Carnegie?
Okay, so, well, Carnegie writes a number on a paper and gives it to Schwab. Schwab, I think it was like 350 million.
Right.
Schwab gives it to Carnegie, who says yes. And so 350 million. Later on, after it's agreed, a typical handshake agreement, Andy, remember those things?
On a $350 million deal, which means it was a billion dollar deal in today's value.
And
Of course,
Carnegie meets JP Morgan and says, I should have asked for 100 million more. And Morgan says, I would have given you 100 million more if you did. I mean, that was the value there. So who do they name as the first president of this new
well, hold on 1
organization?
second. This was 1903. What year was this when Carnegie?
I think it was 1901. Yeah.
Okay, 1901. Carnegie sells the company to a consortium of investors led by Morgan. So you can understand, first of all, it's a lot of money. So, to put it mildly, that's like $1 billion or more in today's monetary value. Second of all, Carnegie was then late 60s. I think he was born in the 80s. So
right off into the sunset. Late 60s back then was really old.
Yeah, it was old, right? This is before the development of penicillin and antibiotics. And so, the life expectancy was not as high as we remember. We talk about The Fountainhead a lot, Ayn Rand's great novel. And again, if you guys out there haven't read it, I envy you that you have the chance to read it for the first time. Well, Ayn Rand's writing in the 1930s. Its story takes place in the 1920s. And Howard Roark, the hero, is a young man. He says to the dean, maybe I have 60 years to live. He said, most of that time spent working. Well, 60 years to live. That was the life expectancy. Then before antibiotics, people got pneumonia. Didn't George Washington die of pneumonia? You got pneumonia, and many elderly people of 50s and 60s, they died. So anyhow, so Carnegie, you're right. That is mid to late 60s. Carnegie was in 1901. That's very old. But he'd been running the company for 30 years or more. He'd run any number of businesses going back, to earlier than that, when he was working at the Pennsylvania Railroad. So I could see why he was ready to retire and do other things with his life. After an enormously productive life in the steel business. But one thing I want to say about Carnegie, about what you raised the question about giving money away. Should we give money away? Yeah. Carnegie, in his book, The Gospel of Wealth, regarded it as a moral responsibility for wealthy men to give their money away, which I flat out reject 100%. But you said very nicely at the start, you work hard, you're enormously productive, you earn your money, however much it is, you have the moral right to spend it as you will. One thing I'll say for Carnegie's philanthropy, though, is he put a lot of money into helping poor people who really wanted to rise out of poverty, building libraries and scholarships for universities and stuff for really worthy candidates wanted to rise. So if you believe you have to give your money away, at least that is the most beneficent way to do it.
Not the deadbeats.
No deadbeats need apply for Carnegie's philanthropy. So,
exactly. Yeah, exactly, Andy. So 1901 is when U.S. Steel is brought into existence. And at the same year, there's a defunct, on the verge of bankruptcy, decrepit company called Bethlehem Steel. And Schwab just buys shares in the company and just lets it, while he's running U.S. Steel, he's a major owner in Bethlehem Steel. Well, after a couple of years now the antitrust laws are starting to crack down. U.S. Steel is too big. He doesn't get along with JP Morgan nearly as well as he did with Andrew Carnegie. And
with Elbert Gary also, didn't he have?
That's right. With Elbert Gary. So
Gary, Indiana is named after Elbert Gary.
Yeah. That's right. The Jackson 5 are from there, Gary, Indiana.
Well, it was big steel. It was a big steel town.
That's yes. So one of the things that Carnegie did, he kind of kept Schwab in line under his domain. He tried to. I mean, one incident was he broke the bank in Monte Carlo. He lost Schwab lost so much money. And publicity came out in the US about it. And this is when he was working for Carnegie. Carnegie did not have he had no tolerance for that. And unfortunately, Schwab even lied to him about it, saying, no, those are just rumors, And Carnegie, he let him off the hook that time. But once he was not under Carnegie's, thumb or at least leadership, Yeah, Schwab became the hedonist. He certainly became more of a hedonist. What every whim that he wanted, he paid. He paid for, and that's his prerogative as far as financially. He did not give his wealth away, as I read from the opening of Steel Titan. He did give some of it away, but again, it's his choice. And
Right.
here's Andy. Here's the main point that I want to bring up: the importance of integration in philosophy. Okay. Yeah. If you create wealth, you want to have as long a life as possible. What makes your life, as rich as possible? Well, it's kind of being productive. It's being honest. It's having integrity, which Schwab really spoke a lot about, having integrity, and it's being rational in your decision making. And that was something that sadly, very few of those great industrialists had, fully consistent philosophy.
You reminded me, I forget the author's name, but it was a financial self-help book. I think it goes back to the late 19th
Think
century.
and Grow Rich you're talking about, right?
No, actually Think and Grow Rich. That's Napoleon Hill, right? That's
yes.
Yeah. No,
Schwab is a major player in there. That's when I first found out about him. Yeah, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
No, the book I was thinking of, that's a Think and Grow Rich. I think everybody should read. But the richest man in Babylon, or the wealthiest man in Babylon, yep. I forget the author's
That's
name.
it.
But one of the pieces of advice he gives us is pay yourself first. And right. That is whenever you get a paycheck, you have to pay your bills and everything. Take out whatever you can afford, even if it's just 10% or whatever, and put it in the bank. Or invest it, or whatever. But this is not to be touched. This is your building wealth for yourself.
That's right.
Schwab preeminently had the means to pay himself first. And he, if he put away 10% of this 500 million that he went on to spend, he would have had 50 million. When he spent everything else. You're right. That would be an integrated approach. I could spend 90% on personal consumption, and the 10% or even 5% with 25. Well, me a paltry 25 million, when he retired in the 1930s during the Depression, which really was a fortune. But he didn't do it. This is, and it's interesting because it shows us somebody could be brilliant in one area of life. In this case, a productive giant in the steel industry, but be deficient in other important areas of his life. He didn't save of all this wealth that he created and earned. He didn't save. That's a mistake. And he's a hedonist, like you said, pursuer of bodily pleasure, and he spent money on that. And unfortunately, he also, from what I've read, he was married, ran around on his wife with any number of mistresses, right?
Yeah, got one nurse pregnant and who had a child who he supported, but
he didn't have any children with his wife, but he had a child with one of his girlfriends. I remember a friend of mine used to say, about this reminded me of Schwab: wives and loved ones, may they never meet. And that's what sounds like.
It's very French, right?
Yeah, isn't it? It sounds like the way Schwab conducted his love life. So we could criticize him for failings and moral failings, but they pale in comparison to the man's sheer productive genius and work ethic and the steel and oil. Those are the two major staples of an industrial economy. Carnegie and his guys, Frick and Schwab on the one hand, Rockefeller and his team, these guys were enormous. Robber barons is just ridiculous. They didn't rob anything. They weren't barons.
So another good book, Andy, that I recommend is The Entrepreneur versus the State, Burton Folsom. And he's got a whole chapter, Charles Schwab and the steel industry, which I highly recommend. But so in 1903, only 2 years he's running U.S. Steel. He's ready to run his own show, which is Bethlehem Steel, which is Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And our dear friend, Paul Saunders gave me this T-shirt of
Oh,
Bethlehem
nice.
Steel several years ago
Nice.
because we went there. Paul doesn't live that far from Bethlehem Steel. Now it's run, it's kind of, they turned it into to the nightclub district. And they've kind of fixed it up, but they're not producing steel anymore. But the H-beam, which is a precursor to the I-beam, that was Schwab's idea. Okay, and that's what gave birth to the rise of the skyscraper, Andy. Steel beams allowing you to go vertical was why Bethlehem Steel shot to the top. They never became as big as U.S. Steel, but U.S. Steel had incredible, head start. But Schwab was, again, he's turning a nothing, a factory organization into a top liner. Then comes World War I, and he's making, munitions and things to help win the war. And of course, because he's doing this and earning money out of it, he's accused of war profiteering, and all those charges were dropped. He's rising more in ascendancy as his own man, as an independent guy. So he's no longer under Carnegie. He's no longer under Morgan. He's now Charles Schwab running the show. And Carnegie Steel, Bethlehem Steel, just the town of Bethlehem, Andy, there was nothing. Maybe there was this little baby Jesus, I don't know, but in Pennsylvania, but there was nothing there until Charles Schwab came along and turned it into this incredible, incredible location. So totally gets credit for that. And then the one thing you said about saving wealth, the other mistake that he made was he didn't really diversify. So all of his wealth was tied into stocks in Bethlehem Steel. So 1929 stock market crashes, and that now he's got nothing, and that was what led to his downfall. Last 10 years of his life, particularly 5 years, he built his mansion that I had showed a picture of, but 86 rooms, swimming pools, bowling alleys, but nobody, it was too expensive to he couldn't sell it. Built it for $7 million, was trying to sell it for $1 million. Nobody would buy it. Even offered it to the mayor, LaGuardia, Mayor LaGuardia, who said, "No, I'm not going to live in that." And they ended up raising it. So again, he lived beyond his means.
Was eventually taken over by his creditors, right? Because he was in debt. Lived the last X number of years in a small apartment, right? But like I said, he died a few years too soon because Bethlehem, he still had stock in Bethlehem Steel, right? Which shot way up after the U.S. got dragged into World War II in late 1941, and Bethlehem Steel was making munitions for the U.S. war effort against fascism, and the value of Bethlehem stock shot way up. Schwab would have been a wealthy man again, but unfortunately, he died in 1939 too soon.
And they did it on the momentum, Andy, we talk about productive capacity. Schwab built them up to succeed. He put them in the position with his effort and his decision-making and his hiring practices, put them in a position to help the U.S. win the war and provide, the munitions and other steel works for that. So, a lot of lessons here, Andy, a lot of life lessons in the story of Schwab. First of all, be good at what you do. That's kind of like number one, have this entrepreneurial spirit, have this $1 million smile, try to get the most out of people, become enthusiastic and show appreciation, give incentives, because people do respond to incentives. And on the other side, try a little bit, enjoy your wealth, but try to live within your means.
Here's where Aristotle's, the talking principle of moderation. There's a lot of cases where I disagree that moderation is a virtue. I mean, for instance, we don't want the middle ground between honesty and dishonesty. We want an extreme of honesty. But regarding wealth and pleasure, I think the middle ground is, roughly middle ground is wise. Pay yourself first is a very good principle, no matter how wealthy you are. Put the money away so you have it, and don't spend it. That's for the future. That's or for your retirement, but that's, that's financial security in your life. Spend the rest on your to live a joyous life and be happy. But you raised a good point about hedonism. Hedonism is not good for your mental or physical health. If you're partying all night, gambling, drinking, running around on your wife, it's gonna harm your marriage. It's gonna harm your bodily health, and psychologically, you're not living in this area of your life as rationally and as healthfully as you are in this other area of your life. And I think it has to harm you. I would guess anyway, that it would harm your self-esteem, but it certainly harm, your bodily health. And it's certainly going to harm your relationship with your wife. So, we criticize him properly for these errors, and we can learn from these errors are writ large. Well, before we sign off, Robert, we have to mention that quote he told his secretary at Bethlehem Steel.
Go big, go big, or
yeah.
I was going to say Can I just say, Andy, once you brought up Aristotle, because I think of Aristotle as great souled man, the magnanimous man, who is proper with his wealth, who spends big in the right way for the right purpose. And Schwab did that to a high degree, but then he went overboard. But go ahead, tell the story that he.
Yeah, so it's about the H-beam that eventually became morphed into the I-beam, which was made these towering, from what I understand, made these towering skyscrapers possible.
Yes.
And there was nobody knew if there was a market for it at that point. And it was going to take a lot of money to produce it. And they may, go bankrupt if they did. And Schwab says to his secretary, he said, after a lot of thought, I decided if we're going to go bust, we're going to go bust big.
That's right, big.
Go bust big, he said.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't go bust. The HB was enormously successful, and he made a fortune. It turned out to be a very sizable market for it.
Yes.
So he was a risk taker. He was an entrepreneur, and he was something of a what did Edison call him? A con man or something? I forget what Edison's insult.
Edison called him a great hustler. That was
great
one
hustler.
thing.
Yeah, that's what he called him. Hustler. Call him a hustler.
Yeah, which is not a con man in that sense. It's hustler is he worked, he definitely, put.
I don't know. Edison might have been using the term hustler to mean, that he could talk, he could talk a golden stream and get you to go along with him because that was about the time, at least there was an accusation that he got this lucrative contract for the Trans-Siberian Railway, Schwab.
Yes.
After he had given this expensive, like $200,000 gift to the Grand Duke's wife or mistress or something. I don't know if that's an accusation. Maybe true, maybe false. I don't know. But if Edison meant hustler in the negative sense, he might have been referring to something like that. Or he
made Edison's light bulb. He had his own power plant in that mansion, Andy, with 75,000 light bulbs in it. So he certainly proved Edison's theory. I think the two of them got along. But that's a good point. But to me, I think we go big, or we bust. That's his whole life. Isn't that Schwab's life in essence?
Exactly.
He went big, and at the end, he busted big.
Yeah, exactly. But you may be right. Edison may have been saying that in the complimentary sense. He hustles, the way when we were kids, the term,
Charlie Hustle, Pete Rose,
the
baseball player.
Right, the great baseball player. But when we were kids, the expression "so and so is a go-getter" had currency. You don't hear that much anymore, unfortunately.
Can-do spirit. Yep.
Yeah, a go-getter, somebody who hustles, who works 2 or 3 jobs, trying to get ahead. Edison, when Edison called him a great hustler, he may have meant it in that sense. So anyway, certainly Schwab lived a memorable life, with a great many virtues, some flaws that we criticize him for, but his virtues far outweigh his flaws. And I think we could salute the great man. And thank you to Mr. Schwab and your comrades in the steel industry for the tremendous wealth that you bequeathed us, making possible so much building in America and then around the world with all the benefits of the steel industry. So next week, everybody, we will be back once again on the Hero Show, celebrating the lives of great men and great women, celebrating them for their own sake and expressing gratitude for the material and intellectual wealth that they bestowed on us, but also celebrating them in another sense that we can learn from them. We can be inspired by them,
That's
and we
right.
can seek to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. So we'll be back next week, everybody, once again
Wow.
on the Hero Show.